Perspective, presented by the New Orleans Secular Humanist Association, following our few principles of humanism.
We're committed to the use of science and reason for understanding the universe and for solving human problems. We're skeptical of untested claims of knowledge, but we're open to new ideas.
We are concerned with securing justice and fairness in society and in ending intolerance and discrimination. We are committed to the total separation of religion and government.
We affirm humanism as a realistic alternative to the theologies of despair and the ideologies of violence. We reject the concept of an afterlife and believe in living a full and rewarding life here and now.
We value and respect each individual's right to judge and lead their lives according to their own position, as long as it's respectful of other people, living in a free society.
We hope you enjoy today's program and others in the weeks to follow.
Hello, and welcome to the Humanist Perspective, presented by the New Orleans Secular Humanist Association. If you'd like to learn more about secular humanism and NOSHA, you can go to nosha.info on the web to find out all about us and upcoming events. Today, I'm joined by fellow NOSHA member and fellow board member, William Gautreaux, and he and I went to the Freedom from Religion Convention past weekend in Madison. So we thought that we would tell you all about our experience there and sort of what it's like to go to an atheist convention. And it was so what did you think of it? Overall, do you think worthwhile experience?
Oh, definitely. It was great. You know, it was very well run. Everything was on schedule. We had a lot of powerhouse speakers. At different, we had entertainment. We had chances to socialize with other people. There was like 750 people there, so you had lots of opportunities.
That was big.
Yeah, there were breakfasts.
That is the biggest convention, any kind of atheist conference I've been to.
So there were lots of opportunities to meet other people just like us, and it was a great time. Yeah. And it was long days. There was long days because there was so much to pack into it.
So let's say maybe just to give an idea of what kind of things happened, just a brief sort of rundown of what did happen. That on Friday we started with an open house at Free Thought Hall, which is the Freedom from Religion Foundation now has a building, and it is their it's pretty new, right? They just built it.
A few years. They added on to the old building, and it's been a few years since they've added on to
because they have 4 floors here, and there's library, there's the studio for their podcast and their TV show. They work out of this. The Freedom from Religion Foundation does a lot of legal work where they challenge separation of church and state violations, and so they have a lot of lawyers that work there.
It's like like a law library, and there were a lot of offices for the lawyers to work because they have 9.
And it was, and they had on the walls all sorts of things from their past billboard campaigns and ad campaigns, and that was interesting to see because they've been around for a long time, haven't they?
40 years, because this was the 40th. This is the 40th convention.
40th anniversary.
So, and Lori said they incorporated in 1977.
Right.
Yeah,
and
so it's
of
been
course,
40 years.
they showed us the graph of how membership had gone up over the years, and of course a very big jump after November of this past year, and people joining members. And so this was kind of like an early, almost pre-conference stuff in the morning there Friday if you were there early, and so after that was a boat tour where we got to, because Madison's just gorgeous, with the 2 lakes, and so that was kind of a chance to, that was basically a socialized thing.
They had a lot of things to socialize.
I feel like we had a good balance between educational things and social things, and it wasn't too much of sort of left to your own, but it also, you didn't get the feeling like, I never really got to talk and meet people.
Right.
And our name tags did have where we were from. I brought my name tags. It's Beth Deitch, Louisiana. We were the only 2 from Louisiana, right?
I think we were
700 and some odd people.
Yeah, when they did a roll call on Sunday morning, they called out each state, and you would yell for your state. And I was,
I was not there yet. I was
right. So I yelled, and I think I was the only one who yelled for Louisiana. But
Yeah, well, maybe there was somebody else who wasn't there like I was. I didn't get up in time or something. There were a few times, mostly we saw most things, but there were a few things that you saw that I didn't, or vice
Maybe
versa.
one or two. It was there were long packed days.
Right, right. And then the conference proper started really in the afternoon, where we began to get speakers, and they are people who have done various things in regards to church-state separation or science advocacy and education, or advocating for humanism and humanistic values around the world. There was definitely a substantial international aspect to the talks, and I love that they started with a student activist, a 13-year-old student activist who she was a little spitfire, Kelly Helton, and just 13 years old, and already I'm standing up for what's right. And I really love seeing the younger people. They definitely do encourage younger people with their internship programs.
So the issue was the issue with her school. The teacher wanted to, I can't remember, pray in the classroom.
Yeah. I think they were doing prayers in the classroom, and she was like, this is not cool.
This is not right.
This is a public school, and it always baffles me how people can think, even if it's not for people who are atheists, but there are other religions. Surely you have some Jews or some Muslims or some Buddhists or somebody. Yeah. Even in Kentucky where they are, and they just don't sort of.
Well, even in around the New Orleans area, maybe even in Jefferson Parish, it's very diverse, and so we have Hindus, we have Buddhists, we have non-religious, we have Muslims. So you can't just go off on your Christian prayer.
But a lot of these places, they seem to. They're sort of like, we're the majority, so. And sort of my test is, would you be okay with it being a Muslim thing, a Muslim prayer, a Muslim holiday thing, a Muslim program, whatever? And if they say no, then it's like, well, then you see. If you would feel that was somehow leaving you out or othering, well, that's how anybody who's not your religion
And that's
feels.
what a lot of what freedom of religion does. They have lots of lawsuits, or not lawsuits, but violations.
But they are very much, I think, the legal arm of, if different organizations focus more on different aspects of the secular humanist / atheist movement. FFRF is definitely the legal
That is what they do. They advocate for separation of church and state, and most of their action comes from just sending letters like, "Hey, what you're doing is illegal. Please stop." And most people do. Sometimes people are stubborn, and it has to go to a lawsuit. But that's what they do.
Yeah. And I think that's like if something happens at your school or your community that is not okay. For example, one of the what was the award that they had? One of the things on the police car. I forget what they call the award. One of the find it there. Was it one of their freedom from that was Miriam and Nazi. Anyway,
Freethinkers of the Year.
Freethinkers of the Year.
Jared
That was
Blum,
right.
Jessica
That was
Steele,
right.
Marie
And one of those was about the Christian crosses on the police cars and the "In God We Trust" and all, and sort of another thing that people think that when they get complaints about this sort of thing, or they get their letter from the FFRF, that it's because we're offended. And I hate that. And be it's not offended. It is rather, this is when it's your government or your law enforcement or your school or your courtroom. I'm wondering if I'm going to get fair treatment. I'm going, you're not going to like me if you know I'm an atheist, and I'm not going to get judged fairly or policed fairly or non-Christian in any way. And so by putting this, Christian cross or your 10 Commandments in your courtroom and all of that, what that says is there are some people who we
like
favor.
Better than others.
Yeah. It sort of
if you're not a Christian, then I've got this bias against you already before the trial even starts, or I'm not going to get justice.
Right. And so, that's why the Freedom from Religion Foundation is so important. And and they are who you call, and you can be anonymous, I think, can't you? And they, most of the time, they'll send a letter to say the school district, and the school district will then show it to their lawyers, who will go like, "Yep, letter's right."
You can't do that. Please stop.
And most of the time, they're okay. Once in a while, they decide they'd rather just waste their people's tax dollars trying to
silly, 'cause
defend.
they always lose anyway.
I know, and then they have to pay the FFRF's legal fees when they lose. And people don't get rich off of that, though.
No.
Unlike the God's Not Dead 2 movie, where somehow you get rich off of bringing up a church-state violation. You do not. The most you get is legal fees, and sometimes a symbolic $1.
Right, and that's what Jessica Castillo did. When
Right,
he sued,
right.
he sued for $1. Just it was symbolic. He just
Right.
wanted justice.
Right. And so, even when they get a sort of what seems like a big award, it's really just covering costs.
Right. Legal costs that they incurred.
Yeah. So, who would you say was your favorite speaker, your favorite programmer? This is going to be a hard one.
Yeah, it's a hard one. See, there were different. So I'm a linguist. I love languages and whatnot. So of course I love Steven Pinker, who is a prolific writer. He's a Harvard professor. He's also an FFR honorary president. So he writes a lot about linguistics. But lately he's been writing about other things.
Yeah, and you got a couple of his books there,
I
didn't
sure
you?
do.
Because
And
they
you know,
also have merchandise tables
lots
where
of
you
books
can.
for sale.
Yeah, mostly books. It is
But only
mostly books, although there's a lot of other little things too.
Well,
But
this has
books
nothing to do with non-religion, but one's called Sense of Style.
Yeah, which
and it's
I
about writing.
found it
about
interesting
The thinking
from a-
person's writing guide, because I like to write plays.
Right.
And so, if Stephen
Which
Beck
I'm
has
interested
something
in
to say
looking at
about
that because it seems so not in his wheelhouse, doesn't it? Because he's a psychologist,
he's
a
been
cognitive
writing for-
psychologist and linguist. Well, I
Yeah.
guess the linguist stuff.
He's been writing for 30 years, so I guess he has a lot
yeah.
to say about writing. He's a
Yeah.
great writer, and it's easy to understand.
Well, he's done a lot of research into how language develops. So.
Yeah, which
right.
is right down my alley. And the other one is called, and you've been reading this book,
Yeah.
it's called The Better Angels
third
of Our
way through.
Nature, and you can talk about this, because I brought it because it
Well,
sounded
it's about
fascinating.
how we as a species essentially have been becoming less violent over time. I mean, and certainly there are pockets of violence, and violence still happens, but globally your odds of being killed by violence or exposed to violence are
Or-
far lower than they previously have been. I mean, I'm 50 years old and have never been subjected to any appreciable violence, which historically is astonishing.
Yes.
Pretty well, most people used to just be beaten before they were out of childhood, plenty.
So this is we're becoming a more moral society.
Right. And that one focuses very much on violence specifically, but then he gave a talk on the book that he's working on now that's almost out. He said his tentative title was something like...
Enlightenment Now.
Yeah, Enlightenment Now, something about Enlightenment values, and it builds on that not just are we becoming less violent, we are living longer, we are becoming more well-educated worldwide, we are actually, even though we have some income inequality expanding in this country, there's little blips, everything's not
improving.
a continual improvement, but overall inequality and access to the good things in life is declining globally. Literacy is increasing, and and he attributes that to Enlightenment humanist values of science and inquiry and empathy and although interestingly, as he noted, news coverage during this time has just gotten more and more pessimistic.
Yes. I
Even
talked
though-
about that. And that makes us think that things are worse and not better today, when
Right.
they actually are getting better.
Well, and of course, I had my little fangirl moment when because I was one of the 3 lucky people to ask a question, and I
yeah.
asked about that, and he said that my question was very good, and that it was really an interesting and concerning trend
Yes.
that if people don't value these Enlightenment values that have increased the well-being of the planet over the decades, that it's not a guarantee that we keep going in that direction. So, that was a really good talk. It was a really, really good talk.
Yes.
I know we also both very much enjoyed Miriam Namazi.
Yes.
They gave her an award too. She's a Freedom from Religious Fundamentalist
Yes.
Award.
Yeah.
And for anyone who doesn't know who Miriam Namazi is, she is an Iranian-born secularist and human rights activist. She's a commentator and broadcaster, and she lives in Britain now.
Yes.
And so she hosts a television program called Bread and Roses that's in 2 languages. What was it? English and what?
And Persian. Yeah.
Right. So she is sort of advocating largely against religious oppression in Muslim societies,
Yeah.
which is where she comes from. She is a
Right.
former Muslim. Was she born at least into a Muslim
She
family?
was born in Iran. I'm
Yeah.
not sure she was born into a Muslim family. I think
yeah.
she's ex-Muslim, so
Yeah,
that's why
yeah.
she feels like she has validity in speaking
Yeah.
on these topics.
Yeah, and I know you said you felt like she gave you some really new perspectives on some things.
Yeah. Mainly what I took away from it, and I've been feeling all this, but she was able to verbalize it really well, is that, people confuse critique of religion, and in particular critique of Islam in her case, with Islamophobia or with, some kind of religious bigotry,
Right.
bigotry against religion.
Well, or
And-
against religious people.
Yeah.
That I can say, I think the religious idea is a bad idea, but that doesn't mean I want to be mean to or discriminate against the people.
Right.
In any way.
And she had a lot of photos and slides because she attended Gay Pride in London, and they had a lot of slogans against Islam and Allah and all this, and people confusing like it's not against people, it's against ideas. You can't offend ideas, you know.
Well, and sort of the double standard, because as she pointed out, they had some people had a sign that said like, what was it, Allah or Muhammad? Muhammad is gay or Allah is gay.
Allah is gay, yeah.
And and they got some pushback from the organizers of Pride, of people who have been largely oppressed on their own, of we can't have this, but people have been carrying Jesus's gay signs forever without any.
Yeah,
and
Miriam and her group got a letter from the organizer of Gay Pride London saying like, oh, this is Islamophobic and this is bad. But like you're saying, we can critique, it's okay to critique Christianity, but when it's really critique of all religions, it's critique of ideas, not of people.
Well, and I actually consider a lot of the people who are most harmed by bad ideas in Islam are in fact Muslims, especially women. That they are, not only do I not hate them for being Muslim, I see them, if anything, as victims of some of the worst ideas of Islam. And certainly ex-Muslims and people like Miriam Namazi, feel very bewildered and abandoned by the left that is supposedly the progressive, pro-feminist, pro-human rights, pro-individualist group of certainly the U.S. that appears to not be willing to stand up for those kinds of rights in Muslim societies for fear of being called Islamophobic.
Right.
Yeah.
And it feels like she's being. It's a lot of pushback against critique of that brand of religion when we should be able to critique our religions without feeling like we're critiquing the people. Like
right. And and that's kind of a bizarre disconnect, like with the Southern Poverty Law Center, who generally I want to trust their categorizations of who's hate groups and who's not doing good things, and I think they mostly get it right. But when they put Ayaan Hirsi Ali, who's an ex-Muslim, as blanking on the other guy, a guy who is actually still considers himself a Muslim, who argues for reform from within to want to modernize and liberalize Islam, and they were put on there as anti-Muslim extremists or something like that. And how do you call Muslims anti-Muslim extremists? The ones who are saying, and Ayaan Hirsi Ali is like missing some of her genitalia, so don't you be telling her that she doesn't have a right to say this has some bad ideas,
Yeah, she was harmed. She was forced. She was about to be forced into a marriage, and she was able to escape by escaping at the airport in Germany. So
and so when even people speaking out about their own harm becomes classified as extremist hate speech, it's kind
of. So I think Miriam was saying that we need to rethink these things.
And also, I know she also very much advocated for helping to empower the people who are in these countries. It's not that like we can go save anybody. That's not our role. We can help give them the resources to be the change that they
There's a lot of people
need.
being assassinated and murdered, and you can't leave Islam in some of these countries. Or you're
in Bangladesh, there's all these like atheist bloggers being just hacked to death with machetes and stuff. And it's for her standing up against those things, that's why she got the Freedom from Religious Fundamentalism Award. Which
and it has nothing to do with like which one's worse than the other. It's not a scorecard at all.
No,
it's just the freedom to critique any of these ideas.
Right. And that's also sometimes given when you want to critique something that is happening here in this country, like say something that is a misogynist thing, some way in which women are being disadvantaged here, and they'll say, well, at least you're allowed to read. In Muslim countries, it's even worse. Well, first of all, you could dismiss any first world issue that way. It could be worse, and we can consider more than one thing at once.
Correct. Surely that problem's worse, but we can still talk about both problems at the same time.
Right. And so I thought that one was really interesting.
That one was very enlightening for me.
I don't think you saw Brent Michael David's talk, but I did find that really. Did you know an American Indian atheist?
I came in at the end.
Yeah, and he talked quite a bit about he's a citizen of the Mohican Nation, and he's a fairly famous composer, if you know composers, apparently. But sort of talking about how religion is also used as part of the subjugation of Native Americans, and that actually he was indoctrinated into Christianity. And when he kind of decided that was total crap and left it, and got more in touch with sort of his Native American heritage, but he said he really couldn't buy into the supernaturalism of that either, that you could see it in a symbolic way, and that it's important to preserve the culture in a symbolic way, but that that there are a lot of Native Americans who feel that way, that even though they like to, well, we all like ritual, people like community and history, but that they don't necessarily literally believe the supernatural aspects. And he was talking about maybe getting together some kind of at least Facebook group where people can find each other, Native American non-believers can find. Do you know Dan Barker is actually part Native American, like a quarter? I did not.
A quarter.
Yeah. I can't remember now. Oh my God. That's not in his little bio. Dan Barker, by the way, I don't think we mentioned, Dan Barker is one of the presidents of the Freedom from Religion Foundation. He and his wife, Annie Laurie Gaylor, are co-presidents.
Yes.
And Annie Laurie Gaylor's mother founded the Freedom from Religion.
Yes.
Yeah, and what was it?
Ann Nicole Gaylor.
Ann Nicole Gaylor. Yeah. Dan Barker was an evangelical preacher for most
19 years.
Most of his life. He was an evangelical.
So he would know more than anyone about the insides of Christianity.
Right. Yeah, and he wrote his book. I think the one that's mostly about him is Godless, about how he
losing faith in faith. Or one of those two.
Yeah, I think that's the subline of it, Godless. Or I think Godless is how an evangelical preacher became one of America's most famous atheists.
Yes.
And of course, he was wonderful. We also had some fun things.
Yes.
Like comedian Paula Poundstone.
Yes.
That was a wonderful, wonderful set. That was a lot of fun. And we had Julia Sweeney, who came and gave us she apparently watched a bunch of religious movies, a bunch of Christian movies.
Christian movies, yes.
She wanted to watch the big money ones, the big ticket ones. And
10 of them she watched.
10 of them that apparently her family was really glad when she was done with that. They're like, can you go to this convention, tell them about this so we can be done with
She said the last 3 was really a chore to do because she had to get through those last 3, but she watched 10 movies,
Yeah, like God's Not Dead and God's Not Dead 2. And what was the one where we had little Oliver Twist Jesus?
The Anne Rice book that was turned into a movie, Out of Egypt, I think. Something like that.
And and she made fun of them, and that was like saying somehow their Jesus is like Oliver Twist.
Has a British accent,
Mother, what are they doing over there, Mother?
I touched the leper, and now he's cured.
Yeah. That was
and then his Mary had a Spanish accent for some reason, like Jesus who gets inside, But yeah, it was. Julia Sweeney was on Saturday Night Live for 5 or 10 years.
Yeah, and she did. Was it a stage show? Letting Go of God.
It was a one-woman show.
One-woman show. I know. I saw the movie. I actually have the movie version DVD,
okay.
Which I haven't watched in ages. So we should get together and watch it. Oh, and Roy Zimmerman, who does.
Parodies.
Parodies, yeah, satirical songs.
Yes.
And
he's a great guitarist. So he plays guitar and he sings. He writes his own. Well, he doesn't always write the music, but he writes alternative lyrics to songs. And one of them was called Joel Osteen, sung to the tune Jolene. So instead of Jolene, it's Joel Osteen. And so we sing about the hurricane and how he had to open his doors only after he got critiqued.
Right. Yeah. How he was like, well, they didn't ask me to be a shelter. Right.
So he was, he was before Julia.
Yeah, and I wasn't already familiar with him, but you were. That was. They also had there with some raffles. They had the Clean Money, which is the Clean Money is money before 1954, which does not say "In God We Trust,"
right?
Because it was in the 50s with the start of the Cold War and communism that we were going to, as is that when we changed the motto?
Well,
Is that when we put it on the
there's
money?
Just two mottos. The first
Well,
one was
'cause
always
E pluribus unum, from many
and then
one,
In God
which
We
is
Trust
perfect.
is another one. So we have two, either
Yeah.
official and unofficial
Yeah.
slogans. Yeah.
Well, I think the original motto was E pluribus unum,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
there is an original motto project that's advocating for trying to get that back.
I think they're both sort of co-official. Well, I have to
Right. So money did not always say that, and they have some. They'll have some older money that is donated
bills.
and raffled them off. I did not win any of them. They also did a silent auction that Paula Poundstone signed her trademark bar stool, the one she used
Yeah.
in the show, and auctioned that, and auctioned Anna Nicole's original, Anna Nicole
Desk.
Gaylor's original desk that she had done all of her
writings on
secularist
for 25
work on.
years, and she'd
Right.
written a lot of her writings on
Right. And then there was all sorts of, as we said, things to buy. We had the books, for sure. I got an interesting little book called Just Pretend, which is kind of about a free thought book for children, and about how, people believe a lot of different things, and most of it's just pretend, but, everyone has their own different, some of it sort of could have gone to our discussion in the last show about many people believe in a God because it makes them think about being good, and that they think God will punish all the bad people in the world, and let bad things happen to bad people, and so on. They have these little Freedom from Religion, FFRF.org, little magnets that have quotes from famous freethinkers. Like this one says, "My country is the world and my religion to do good," from Thomas Paine. President John Adams, "The government of the United States is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion." I got some fun holiday cards. Heathen's Greetings and Keep Saturn in Saturnalia.
Wait, did I show this already?
No, you
I got
got
a bumper sticker, but I don't put these on my car. I just put them on my refrigerator. Make America smart again.
Smart again. That would be lovely. Yeah, and you got something else for your refrigerator? didn't you?
Oh yeah, so I have a magnet, and I collect magnets from every place that I go, a country or a state. This is for Wisconsin, so it's the Free Thought Hall,
Yeah, nice. very
Madison,
nice.
Wisconsin.
Yeah, and I got this little pin here, which it's kind of hard to read it there, but it is actually this. These are from the Reason Rally. We
Yes.
had these. That it says very, not afraid of burning in hell, unabashed atheist, which is kind of becoming one of their little slogans there. And it's, I'm absolutely not afraid of burning in hell. Totally an unabashed atheist. On the other side, I'm secular and I vote. And certainly there was definitely a lot of talk of political activism. And did you feel fired up when you left?
Oh yes, I did. Yeah.
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 I think that's one of the best things about conventions. You sort of you leave really renewed with more energy to kind of right wrongs in the world and some hope. These days, hope.
You also get to
is
hang
kind of
out
a
with
good thing.
700 or 800 people who think like you.
Yeah, and understand what's going on in different states. Some people have it better, some people have it worse, and sort of interesting stories of how secular humanist values are hopefully triumphing.
Yes. I mean, well, from
Oh dear, and we're out of time. So, thank you for watching The Humanist Perspective, and I hope we'll see you again in future shows. Yeah, that went quick.